So everyone, AMD thinks that they have figured out a way to put a desktop 7950 X3D into one of these, a gaming laptop. And in doing so, they say that they have created the best CPU for laptop gaming ever created. That means that it's going up against the best of the best Intel chips, and not only that, it also is meant to dethrone the best Ryzen CPUs for laptops right now too. But have they actually done that? Well, to find out, we've lined up 3 almost identically spec'd 17-inch laptops, one of which is the new SCAR 17 X3D. Our full review of this year's original SCAR 17 is linked up in the corner above, and it's essentially identical to the X3D version since all ASUS did was parachute this new chip into it. The fastest Intel-based laptop we've tested is also here, packing their highest-end CPU, the i9-13980HX. All of them have the exact same GPU config and even graphics power envelope, so this is probably one of the closest apples to apples comparisons you'll probably see. Of course, being the best of the best, these are all among the most expensive laptops on the planet, especially when you consider the SCAR 17 X3D commands a $200 premium over the original, but it still can't touch that Intel system. Yikes. And by the end of this video, I think you're going to understand a little bit better how absolutely out of touch MSI's pricing is for their GT77 Raider. It just has no grounding in the current realities of the market. But you know what has some groundings, a reality in today's market? That is Deepcool's new lineup of coolers. Looking for something different from your CPU cooler? Meet Deepcool's new AK Digital series that add a retro-style digital display showing CPU usage and temperature in a straightforward but completely unique and tasteful way. With these, you get one of the most unique air cooling experiences around. The new Deepcool AK400, AK500, and AK620 digital coolers. Performance and innovation combined into awesome looking coolers for every situation. Find them at the links below. And before we get too far further down into this rabbit hole, I do have to say one very important thing for a lot of folks who might be considering the SCAR 17 X3. This is going to be a very, very rare animal. First of all, this is the only laptop for the time being that will have AMD's X3D chip inside of it. And not only that, according to ASUS, it's only going to be available at select retailers probably by the end of this month or early next month, and there's also going to be very few of them produced. So think of this as sort of like a X3D test in the laptop market. Anyways, the 7945HX 3D does what it does by dumping a ton of L3 cache onto the chip, which helps performance in gaming, but it does come with a small sacrifice in base clocks, which is okay since you won't be running at base frequency in games anyways. Otherwise, the 2 flagship Ryzen laptop processors are essentially identical, right down to their configurable TDPs. And you can see that when running an extended full core workload like Cinebench. There's a slight cutback on performance, but even then the X3D still manages to stay pretty well ahead of the 13980HX. Not only that, but it's also within 12% of the desktop 7950 X3D in multi-core workloads. So AMD's pretty much accomplished their goal of jamming a desktop class CPU into a high-performance gaming laptop. And probably the most impressive thing about this is the X3D manages to hit these numbers while consuming almost 40 watts less than the Intel CPU. It also looks like AMD's binning their most efficient cores for the X3D version since its performance per watt is noticeably better than the 7945HX2. So anyways, with that being said, you can basically be guaranteed that every single time the HX3D and the HX are lined up in a full core workload, the X3D chip will lose by a small amount. But anybody looking at this laptop cares about gaming performance. And in order to determine that, what we did is we took all 3 laptops that you're going to see in this video and completely updated their BIOSes, Windows, and drivers to the latest version. So there are probably going to be a little bit of variations that you see in the numbers in this video versus the numbers in past laptop videos. In addition, the charts will have 2 power modes for all of the laptops. Their absolute highest performance setting at the top of the chart and the default out-of-box modes right below that. The wattage numbers you see are the average power consumption numbers for the RTX 4090 in each system across all games we tested. Anyways, starting with 1080p, and this resolution really benefits the X3D in almost every single game, since a lot of the GPU bottlenecks are removed from the equation. Of course, there's still some situations where the race tightens up a fair amount, mostly because even at this lower resolution, certain games are still GPU rather than CPU limited. And yet in the vast majority of cases, the X3D system simply walks away from everything else, even in its default performance mode, where the RTX 4090 has the lowest average operating wattage here. Moving on to the 1440p native resolution of the SCAR 17, and we start to smack face first into a GPU limitation in a lot of the games. With every laptop here sporting an RTX 4090, that means very slight GPU power differences from one title to another can have noticeable impacts on frame rates, which is why the 7950HX and X3D swap places a few times. But one thing stays constant: the X3D typically has the absolute best 1% lows, which are so much more important than overall averages when we're talking about such high frame rates. What that means is it delivers a more fluid gaming experience. At 4K, all the pressure is put solely on the GPU, so other than a few outlier situations, all three laptops perform in a virtual dead heat. And that's important if you're using any of these to output to an ultra high resolution screen, because while the SCAR X3D is expensive, it also highlights how ridiculously overpriced the GT77 Titan is. That $5,000 Intel laptop doesn't give you an ounce more performance overall, since its graphics card is still capped at NVIDIA's maximum 171 watts, which includes 20 watts of dynamic boost overhead. So what we have here is the fastest gaming laptop that we have ever tested. And while that is so impressive all by itself, what goes even beyond impressive is the way that the X3D actually delivers that performance. Because it just sips back power, needing just 53 watts to hit the kind of performance it does. That's a full 35 watts less than the 13980HX, and still a good 12 watt reduction over AMD's own 7945HX. Now on the desktop side, that might not matter all that much, but you have to consider how different things are on the mobile side. Every laptop has a strict power budget to work with. The more performance you can squeeze out of a given power and temperature envelope, the better. So if a CPU needs less juice, technically more can be directed towards the GPU in gaming scenarios. And while we didn't actually see that situation here because the RTX 4090 is already operating at its peak power envelope, this whole situation with the way AMD is approaching the X3D and their Ryzen 7000 laptop series in general can have massive implications in the future. So anyways, I guess that's pretty much it. What AMD has here is something special. They've taken one of the best gaming CPUs on the planet and brought it over to the laptop space with almost no sacrifices. The only thing holding this laptop back right now and this CPU back in gaming scenarios is actually that RTX 4090 GPU, because even though it's operating at its maximum wattage, you can just see in the benchmarks that the CPU in the system just has so much more to give. And the implications of that are just mind-boggling, especially when you think that by mid next year, the next series of Ryzen laptop CPUs are going to be on the market. And I'm thinking that this X3D chip is going to lay the foundation for what those will actually offer. And will that be enough to keep up with Intel's Meteor Lake CPUs? Well, if AMD actually continues on their efficiency trend with these and gives that much more power to the GPUs, I think they could really be onto something. But we're going to have to find out next year. So personally, I can't wait to see it. I hope that all of you guys are in the same situation. Anyways, I'm Mike with Hardware Canucks, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys.